Hi. I want to talk first about teeth. My father's mother, grandmother, had, as far as I ever remember, had no teeth at all. She had no false teeth. She'd had all her teeth out at some point, and she just ate with her gums, which had become very hardened. And she seemed to have no great problems with this, just that it meant that she had to cut meat and the like up fairly small. I'm not suggesting this is a good thing, but it is possible to manage. It gives a certain look to your face, but she was quite happy with it, and of course, as a child, you accept it as normal. My my other grandmother and both my parents all had all of their teeth out in their mid-20s. I've never really ever got to the bottom of what the reasoning behind this was. It seems as though the dentist told you need a filling and then another filling, and then you might as well have them all out and save the bother later. This, of course, was outrageous. Now, as a child living in England, born at the end of the 40s, I suppose I was one of those children in the 1960s victim of over treatment. Sort of every time you went, you needed a filling, the slightest black mark on your teeth, and they filled it, because now they don't take all your teeth out, they conserve them. And the result of this tends to be that your teeth crack and break in half as you get older. So far I've been reasonably lucky. I've had part of one crack off, which was quite well-ish mended, and the other one, he said he'd crown it if the other half fell off at some point, or if I got pain, which I haven't had. There's just half of it missing. It seems now the general opinion is that people of my age who lived in England, the NHS dentists have managed to make work for themselves and damage your teeth. Probably more than if you'd just gone in when something hurt and then had it filled, if that was possible, or if you'd gone too far, you might have needed the odd tooth out. But probably on balance, at least you wouldn't have your mouth full of mercury, would you? Then came the trend, I think, for people that are a bit younger than me, where you needed to have a brace on your teeth. This also causes where the metal touches against your teeth, you'll find that maybe 10-20 years later that tooth will crack because of the damage caused by the metal. Now, our forefathers had ways of looking after your teeth, which generally speaking didn't require a dentist. And of course, before the National Health Service, you could have a dentist, but it needed to be paid for. So if you had a real problem, you could go to the dentist, but you didn't go there routinely. I think it's basically not eating acidy foods or acid generating foods, which, bear in mind, is not just sugar, but it's also fruits, and particularly fruit juices are probably the most damaging. But if you clean them, that probably is okay. I'm no expert on this. I'm just expressing an opinion that maybe the NHS hasn't worked as well as it might have for dentistry. I don't know what the position now is, whether it's improved or not. I don't live there anymore, so couldn't say. But I think we should just bear that in mind. Anyway, I'll move on to a completely different subject, because talking about the National Health Service made me to think of the election, and I thought of a little manifesto that might be interesting to put as an alternative to the manifestos put up by most of the major parties, the things that they won't discuss. A fair voting system. Now, the current system is not fair. The media are biased. Even the likes of the mainstream television programs are biased, because whilst they can't officially put out biased stuff themselves, the press can put biased stuff out, and then they can report it. It comes to the same thing. I'm most concerned about the vilification of UKIP, not because I need to say that they're necessarily got policies that I would agree with. That's not the point. They should have a fair hearing and not just be dismissed as racists and fools, and in a way that the Liberals are not, because the Liberals are hardly sort of non-foolish, are they? Let's be fair. Fair voting system. There should be an English Parliament. This seems to me to be self-evident, insofar as if there's a Scottish Parliament, a Welsh Assembly, and Northern Irish Assembly, then a Parliament would seem to be the relevant thing to have in England, and none of them will discuss this, really. I can't honestly see why not. I think on the same basis, because of the giant problems with, well, the Savile affair isn't just another example, but it's only an example. I think that the bias of the BBC may be lessened if we simply had a separate service for England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. Obviously they could show each other's programmes, but if you make a programme for English viewers, it should be for English viewers, and then it can include stuff from Scotland, in the same way it could include stuff from France. And if the Scottish section makes an interesting programme, there's no reason why it can't be shown in England. But I think the programme shouldn't be made on a British basis all the time. Our nationalities should come perhaps a bit more to the fore, and I think this might be a useful reform. Some reform is certainly needed. I mentioned child sexual and physical abuse. You hear of it everywhere. I don't really know the facts. It started with the 1,400 in Rotherham, blah blah blah. It seems as though that's not the only thing. Is the abuse by mainly Muslim people. There's abuse by people with the power to do it, it seems, and also the odd individual as well. Now, what nobody ever suggests is that the people that have facilitated this, either simply by ignoring it or I didn't realise, these people shouldn't be in positions of power anymore. Surely that's a reasonable request here. There's people in the police, in the social services, in the main political parties, maybe in the minor political parties for all I know. If these people are found to be aiding and abetting or deliberately ignoring these problems, the churches, the religions as well. I never heard any problem about the Jewish religion in this respect, but would you know if there was? I have no idea. But if there is, these people shouldn't be allowed to be in a position of power over children, or power in general, in the sense of like the police, the social services, and the government, and so on are. We shouldn't have this TIPP thing, which is basically where giant international firms can say, oh, government's made a rule to do with the environment or something, and that's going to lose my profits. I can go to a little tribunal and sue them for millions, even billions of pounds, so that they can't introduce environmental legislation, or indeed lots of other types of legislation, like you couldn't have plain cigarette packets, because the cigarette companies could sue because they own the logo that they're not being allowed to display, and therefore they're losing money, and they can sue without going through the courts. It's just ridiculous that you should give power to international companies that an ordinary sole trader could never dream of having. It's simply unfair. And so I would oppose that. We should talk about the debt and not the deficit. The debt should be stabilised. You can't go on and on borrowing more and more and more and saying, oh, we're a great success because after 10 years we've managed to reduce the amount each year that we borrow more than we owed last year. It's clearly a recipe for disaster. So I'm not saying here, going into a thing of what you might do about it, but clearly you should talk about the debt, not the deficit. And why do the media collude in this? The BBC talks about, oh, the deficit this, the deficit that, just because that's what politicians want to talk about. They should talk about the debt. What has happened to the debt over the last period, the last government, and the government before? Surely English language, it's a world-renowned language. Surely the English language and English law, the first real proper legal system in the world, shouldn't they be the language and the law in England? The only language and the only law officially for official purposes in England. I cannot see why, if you want to integrate a diverse population together, you've got to speak the same language, and there can't be any other choice in England but English, can there? I can see you can run two languages in Wales, Welsh and English, I assume, but that would be a decision for the Welsh Assembly, and Gaelic and English in Scotland, and Irish and English in Northern Ireland, I would imagine. That's a decision for them. But surely in England there is only one language that really should be recognised, and people coming to live in the country should know this in advance, that this is going to be the language. There should be no sale of the Land Registry. This was proposed, but stopped actually by the Liberal Democrats, let's be fair here. This is the record of who owns what. To sell that to an international conglomerate controlled, I don't know, in the United States, which I wouldn't know where it would be controlled in the future, the knowledge of who owns what, and they can charge you to tell you who owns this, and they can, of course, obviously, if they were corrupt, they can make changes into who owns what. This is unbelievably outrageous, and it was proposed by the Conservatives, I have to say. And finally, to protect the environment that our forefathers bequeathed to us. What I mean by this is, well, farmland, for example. They did a fairly good job of preserving, certainly up to the war, before they were pressurised by government to use artificial fertilisers. But even so, the land has been looked after by farmers who own the land better than any corporation is likely to, or better than any government advisor is likely to, I think. And there have been improvements to the land, such as the Somerset levels, or in East Anglia where it's been drained. These, I think we should consider as assets and not put, the natural wildlife that might be there if it was flooded, as an automatic priority over the wildlife that's there now it's not flooded. I think we should give our forefathers some credit for positive reforms that they've made. Now, my suggestion here is that you vote, obviously, for who you want, whichever party it is. I would prefer, personally, that it wasn't one of the main three parties. It's entirely up to you. But if you agree with what I just said, that at the very least this should be discussed, then I suggest that you put your cross like this. Now, I can assure you your vote will have to be counted. It's a cross. It doesn't even need to be a cross to be counted if you look at the rules. So slightly with one bar longer than the other cross has to be acceptable. I can see no reason why, if you can't vote like that, to give at least an indication that you're not happy with the way any of the parties have run things over the last 20 years anyway, probably much longer than that. Think of your teeth, amongst other things. If you want to suggest that I've got a point, at least on most of the things I've said, and that they should be discussed. And if they're not discussed, it's not a democracy, is it? If you can't choose to vote for somebody who might support those items, or at the very least have it discussed on television and have them tell you why not those things that I've suggested there, then you put your cross like that, and at least you will have indicated to the tellers that you're not happy, and we'll take it from there as to what to do next. Because I have to say that well, not me, but you're not living in a proper democracy anymore. So there's quite a campaign on to spoil your vote. It's a shame for you not to choose between whichever one of these sort of inferior people that you wish, and at the same time be able to say, in effect, as you might see on here, I don't know where exactly it would be, an example of a paper that will be rejected if you write none of the above. Well, in this case, it's got a tick on it as well. You're not allowed to do that. Your vote won't be counted, of course, because you said you don't want to vote for anybody. There will be no list at the end that says, and 2 million people voted for none of the above. There'll be no list if you put my mark on it, but it will be marked on the ballot paper for future generations to see you did at least do that much. On that point, I'll say bye.